My son squeezed my hand 3 times under the dinner table. Not once, not twice. 3 short presses, calm and deliberate, against the side of my palm while his girlfriend was in the middle of a sentence about private money and special access. I did not look at him right away. I kept my eyes on the serving spoon beside the potatoes, then on the water rings under Alicia's wine glass, then on the woman herself, smiling across my table as though this were any ordinary Sunday dinner and not the first warning flare my son had sent me in over 20 years. That signal belonged to his childhood. Nathan was 7 when we invented it. My brother had trapped him in a hallway after Christmas dinner and talked at the poor boy for nearly an hour about municipal water systems. Nathan had stood there nodding, too polite to interrupt, too miserable to hide it. On the drive home, he asked me what he should do if he ever needed help leaving a conversation without embarrassing anyone. 3 squeezes, I told him. 3 squeezes and I would step in. We used it a handful of times after that. At weddings. At church receptions. Once at a neighbor's barbecue when a retired dentist wanted to quiz him about math competitions. Then life moved on. Boys become men. Signals disappear. Or so I thought. Nathan was 31 now. And he had just used it again. My wife Carol was bringing in the pie. Alicia Drummond was seated across from me, back straight, ankles crossed, one hand resting lightly on the stem of her glass. She had been seeing Nathan for 4 months and living with him for 6 weeks. Until that evening I had treated her as polished, pleasant, and slightly too eager to impress. Then she started talking about money. Not budgeting or ordinary real estate, but private vehicles, accelerated placement, and returns not available through standard channels. She said it smoothly. That mattered. My name is Gordon Whitfield. I am 63 years old. I spent 22 years with the Ontario Provincial Police, most of them in financial crime, then another 11 consulting on regulatory matters after I retired. I have read too many false prospectuses and too many carefully worded lies built to survive the first glance of a tired or trusting reader. Fraud rarely arrives looking like fraud. It arrives looking informed. Alicia looked informed. Carol set the pie down and smiled. Alicia was just telling us about some of the clients she works with. Alicia gave a small laugh. Only if your husband doesn't mind hearing boring work stories over dinner. I've survived worse, I said. Nathan smiled then, but the smile reached my eyes and not his own. Alicia went on. I work with a small circle of clients who want alternatives to the usual bank products. Real estate-backed opportunities, private lending, agricultural partnerships. A lot of strong returns never make it into the mainstream. I poured more wine. And what do you call yourself exactly? Private wealth facilitator. That title was rehearsed. Facilitator, I repeated. She nodded. A lot of people with money are tired of the big institutions. Too slow, too much friction. They want flexibility, less oversight, translated into flattering language. Carol said, that sounds complicated. It really isn't, Alicia replied. That's what surprises people. Once you're shown the structure, it's actually simpler than the traditional route. I said, who regulates these structures? She looked at me for half a second, just long enough to measure whether the question was casual or informed. Then she smiled. In some cases, the appeal is that they are not burdened by the same administrative drag. Nathan's fork touched his plate with a small, sharp sound. I asked, and the returns justify that? They can, she said, especially if someone gets in during the right intake window. There it was. Time pressure, but softened. Not a countdown clock. A velvet rope. Nathan reached for his water. His hand was steady. That worried me more. My son went very still under pressure. Calm can be useful. It can also be easy to misread. Alicia was still talking. Most ordinary investors never hear about the better side of the market, she said. They get sold safety, then wonder why they never really move ahead. How much better? I asked. She laughed. That depends on the opportunity. Arrange then. Carol looked at me. She knows the tone I use when I am asking a question with teeth hidden inside it. Alicia tilted her head. High teens are not unusual in some spaces. A number like that should make any serious person slow down. Not panic. Slow down. Nathan looked at his plate. Alicia said, of course those kinds of opportunities do not stay open forever. Another touch of urgency. Gentle, friendly, deadly in the right hands. Carol stood up then and said, Alicia, before it gets dark, would you like to see the back garden? The roses are almost finished, but the stone path looks lovely after the rain. Alicia brightened at once. I'd love to. They went out through the back door. The room changed the second the latch clicked shut. Nathan let out a breath through his nose and leaned forward. I lowered my voice. How long? He gave a tired little shake of the head. You knew that fast? You used the signal. He rubbed the heel of his hand over one eye. She moved in 6 weeks ago. And? She started talking to me about my retirement account 2 weeks after that. I felt the base of my spine go cold. What exactly did she say? That I was losing ground by being cautious. That the market rewards people who know how to move early. He swallowed. Then she said she could show me something better. How much does she know you have? His answer came quickly, which told me he had already been asking himself that question. 240,000. Has she asked you to transfer any of it yet? Not directly. She's been building toward it. Documents? He nodded. She emailed me a subscription package last week. Said there was no pressure, but the current intake closes at month end. No pressure. Deadline at month end. What name is on the package? He told me. Did you tell her what I used to do? I told her you were retired OPP. And that didn't slow her down? No, that was important. Nathan said very quietly. Dad, I thought maybe I was reading too much into it. That is why people like this survive. They count on decent people correcting themselves in her favor. He looked at me then, a hard, honest look. So I'm not imagining it? I leaned back and kept my voice even. I do not know the full shape of it yet. I know enough not to ignore it. The back door opened. I said, fast and low, forward me every email, every attachment, every message that mentions the investment. Tonight, say nothing to her. He nodded once. Alicia came back in smiling. Your roses are beautiful. Carol said, Gordon keeps them from giving up entirely. Alicia looked at me. You strike me as a man who likes things orderly. Nathan's shoulders tightened almost invisibly. I smiled. Only where it counts. For the rest of dinner, Alicia was almost flawless. She helped clear the plates before Carol asked. She remembered, from a single earlier visit, that Carol takes tea without milk. She asked me about an old case I had mentioned in passing and listened with the kind of clean focus that makes people feel unusually interesting around her. She was not sloppy. That mattered too. Predators who last are rarely sloppy in person. They save their carelessness for paper. After they left, Carol stood at the sink rinsing plates, her shoulders square, not speaking. You saw it, I said. She did not turn around. I saw you turn to stone. I dried a bowl and set it aside. She's steering him somewhere. How bad? He says she has her eye on his retirement savings. Carol turned then. How much? 240. The dish towel in her hand stopped moving. She knows that? Yes. Carol set the towel down very carefully. Then we are not talking about bad manners. No. We looked at each other across the kitchen. What do you need? She asked. The documents. Then I need to know whether I am looking at foolish enthusiasm, manipulation, or a built fraud. Carol nodded once. My phone vibrated against the table a moment later. Nathan had forwarded the email. 17 pages. Clean logo, formal header, performance chart, legal language dense enough to intimidate a responsible person into pretending they understood more than they did. I opened page 1. Carol touched my shoulder once. I'll make tea. I sat down under the kitchen light. Then I started reading. By page 7 I no longer had any real doubt. The document was polished, but it was built like scenery, good at a glance, empty when touched. The return chart cited no auditor. The section on investor protections referred to a separate assurance framework that was neither attached nor linked. The description of the fund's assets used broad language about private credit secured by physical collateral, but nowhere did it identify the collateral itself. No schedules, no asset list, no verifiable chain. I checked the registered address on the package. It led to a mail forwarding service in Vancouver. $40 a month could buy you something that looked like a downtown office if nobody pushed past the front line. At 12:45, I took off my glasses and rubbed the bridge of my nose. Carol came in wearing her robe and carrying 2 mugs. You're making that face, she said. What face? The one that means your answer is no, but you're gathering the reason first. She set a mug beside me and looked at the pages spread over the table. Well, I have not found a single thing that makes this safer with time. That sounds like you. It should. She sat across from me. Can she really fool people with this? I tapped the performance chart. Easily. Most people stop at the appearance of order. They see a logo, a graph, an address, a few thick paragraphs of legal language, and they feel relieved instead of cautious. Carol folded one leg under herself in the chair. And Nathan? Nathan wanted to believe the person offering it. She did not reply right away. At 8:15 the next morning, I called Sandra O'Leary. Sandra had spent years in white-collar investigations before moving into securities enforcement. She answered on the second ring. "Gordon, I need you to look at a name and a fund package fast." "Is this personal?" "My son." Her tone sharpened at once. "Send it." I gave her Alicia's full name, the company name from the documents, and the Vancouver address. "An hour," she said. My second call was to Paul Trevick, a forensic accountant who could smell deception in arithmetic the way some men smell rain in the air. I read him portions of the subscription agreement over the phone. He stopped me twice. "Go back," he said the first time. "The part about security against hard assets." I read it again. He was quiet, then said, "There is no collateral schedule." That was my read. It is worse than that. The language is arranged to imply protection while making proof impossible. If the investment collapses, there is no clean document trail tying the money to a specific asset pool. So if a client wired funds and the account emptied, you could chase smoke. At 9:50, Sandra called back. "She's real," Sandra said. I stood by the kitchen window. Meaning? Meaning Alicia Drummond exists, studied business, worked at a legitimate wealth management firm, and was pushed out after a complaint. The file is closed, but the complaint happened. What complaint? Inappropriate involvement with a client, older widower, money steered into an unregistered vehicle, $70,000 gone before the firm contained the situation. I closed my eyes. Charges? The victim would not cooperate. Why? Embarrassment. Family pressure. Same story we hear too often. I said, "And the fund?" "There is no registered fund by that name. Not in Ontario, not federally, not anywhere legitimate that I can see. So we call it what it is." "Yes," she said. "From here I would." I looked out at the wet back fence. "How close is your son to moving money?" She sent the package. "He has not transferred anything. Deadline is end of month." "How much is exposed?" $240,000. Sandra was quiet for a beat. "Then we need her on record making the pitch." I already knew that was where this was going, but hearing it made the room feel smaller. "Explain." "Your son meets her one more time. He records the conversation. He lets her talk. We need the promise, the timeline, the transfer route, and the amount. If she asks for commitment and he does not spook her, that gives us leverage. He is going to hate that. I know. But he sent you the signal, didn't he?" "Yes." Then some part of him already knows he is not dealing with ordinary pressure. After I hung up, I sat at the table without moving. Carol had been listening from the doorway. "So it is real," she said. "Yes. And she has done this before." "Yes." Carol came in and sat where Sandra's voice had left me. "Then tell Nathan everything. No softening." "I won't." I drove to Nathan's apartment that afternoon. He opened the door before I had fully stepped out of the elevator, as though he had been standing there listening for my shoes. He looked used up around the eyes. Inside the apartment, the signs of shared life were everywhere. Her coat over a chair, 2 coffee cups drying beside the sink. That ordinary blending made what I had to say feel crueler. We sat on his couch. I told him all of it. The missing auditor, the false sense of asset security, the mail drop instead of an office, the closed complaint, the older man who lost $70,000, the fact that no registered fund existed under the name in his documents. Nathan sat very still through the whole thing. When I finished, he asked, "Did she ever mean any of it?" I answered the part I could answer. The relationship stopped being safe the moment she built a bridge from affection to your retirement savings. He looked at the carpet for a long time. "She told me she loved me." "I know." He nodded once. "Last week." After a while, Nathan said, "What do I do?" I explained Sandra's plan. He would have to meet Alicia one more time. Keep his phone recording. Ask patient questions. Let silence do some of the work. Let her say the numbers, the timeline, and the method. No anger, no accusation, no sudden moral speech that would only send her running. Nathan listened without interrupting. When I finished, I asked, "Can you do that?" He looked me in the eye. "I spent 2 weeks trying to talk myself out of what I already knew. I can sit with her for an hour." He called Alicia while I was still there. She picked up on the second ring. "Hey, you." "I've been looking over the package," Nathan said. "I have a few questions." "Good questions or nervous questions?" she asked lightly. Probably both. She laughed. That's healthy. I'd rather talk in person. Of course. Coffee tomorrow? He glanced at me. I nodded. Tomorrow works. She suggested the place. Mid-afternoon. Her voice stayed warm and easy, never missing a beat. After he hung up, Nathan said, "She does not sound worried, because she thinks she is guiding the next step." Thursday morning, I met him again at his kitchen table. His phone lay between us. "Pocket recording," I said. "Screen in. Voice memo already running before you sit down." He nodded. "Do not rush to fill silence. Ask simple questions. What kind of return? What amount gets the better entry? How quickly the money starts working? What the transfer looks like?" He gave a humorless half smile. "You make it sound like I'm wiring my own robbery." "In a way, you are. We just need her to narrate it." He stared at the table a moment, then said, "What if I get angry?" "You probably will. Keep it in your jaw, not your voice." He stood, put on his jacket, and checked the phone one last time. At the door, I asked, "How do you feel?" He looked past me at the rain against the parking lot glass. "Embarrassed," he said, "and calm, which feels strange." "That calm may save you." He nodded and left. I drove home. Carol was slicing apples for a pie nobody had requested. She looked up when I came in. "He gone?" "Yes." She set down the knife. "Then now we wait." At 4:17, my phone buzzed. "Done. I got it all." Carol looked at my face and knew before I spoke. "He got it," I said. "Call him." I did. Nathan's voice was controlled, but I could hear the strain under it. "She laid everything out," he said. "High returns, 18 to 22%. Better placement if I move over 100. End of month deadline." She said the managers prefer wires because they can move capital faster outside the big banks. "Did she name the account?" "Yes. Credit union account in British Columbia. Enough time for funds to disperse before panic caught up." "You did well," I said. There was a pause. Then Nathan asked, very quietly, "Dad, was there ever a version of this where it ended well if I had kept ignoring my gut?" "No," I said. The line was silent for a moment. Then he said, "Okay." Sandra listened to the recording overnight. At 7:30 the next morning, my phone rang. "It's enough," Sandra said. I was standing in the kitchen in yesterday's shirt with coffee gone cold beside me. "You're moving?" "Today." "What does Nathan need to do?" "Stay available. Save every message. Don't improvise." "Understood. We may need him to confirm a few details, but the recording is strong." She made the ask. She named the amount bands. She pushed the urgency. She gave transfer instructions. It is clean. After I hung up, Carol set a fresh mug in front of me and took the cold one away. "Well, today." She sat down across from me. "Is he alone?" "For the moment." "Then call him." I called Nathan. He answered quickly. "Dad, they're moving today." A breath. "Okay, listen to me. Keep your phone on. Answer direct questions. Do not message her unless you must. Do not try to manage this yourself." "I won't." "Good." Another pause. Then he said, "I didn't sleep." "I know." "You?" "No." That earned the smallest sound from him, almost a laugh and not quite. Then he said, "I'll stay put." There is a kind of waiting that feels active even when you are standing still. Every sound in the house sharpens. The kettle seems louder. Floorboards speak. Rain on the windows sounds like fingers drumming on a desk. Carol tried to make toast. I took 2 bites and forgot I had it. "You need to eat," she said. "I know." "Then do it." I ate 2 more bites. They might as well have been cardboard. By mid-morning, I was walking the kitchen the way I used to pace interview rooms after a witness gave me half a truth and I needed the rest. Except this time there was no room to enter, no next question to ask, no useful thing to do with my hands. At 7:52, Nathan texted, "She's here." That was all. I called him immediately. No answer. Carol looked up from the table. "What is it?" "She's at his apartment." "And?" "I don't know yet." Then my phone rang. "Nathan." I answered at once. "Tell me." He was whispering. "They're inside." "Who?" "The investigators. They came while she was here. They showed badges and went in. I'm in the hallway." The detail cut through me. "Good," I said. "Stay there. I'm standing out here in my socks. Go get your shoes if they let you, then step outside and get air." "Okay." "You did your part." His voice thinned for 1 second. "I know. Call me later." When I turned back, Carol had already risen from her chair. She read it in my face before I spoke. It's happening, I said. She put one hand over her mouth, then lowered it. All right. I did not hear from Nathan again for nearly an hour. It felt much longer. When he finally called, his voice had steadied. She's gone, he said. Taken? Yes. I sat down hard in the nearest chair. Are you all right? I think so. Think so. Not I'm fine. Not I'm okay. Think so. Sometimes that is the truest available answer. What did they tell you? I asked. Not much yet. They said not to discuss the investigation beyond what I've already given them. They took devices, papers, notes. Notes? He exhaled. She had notes on me. I closed my eyes. What kind of notes? My schedule. How much I had in savings. Things I said about work. That I usually think things over before acting. That I trust you. He stopped. It was like seeing myself described by someone who was pricing parts. There are moral injuries and practical ones. That was both. I'm sorry, I said. I know. Over the next several days, more of the structure emerged. Alicia had not invented one scheme and repeated it carelessly. She had adjusted it. Different names, different wrappers, same machinery. Build intimacy, introduce exclusivity, isolate questions, create time pressure, get the money moving before outside review. Investigators could establish 8 victims, with losses totaling over $900,000. Nathan was the first one they could clearly place in the chain who had not lost a dollar. Relief sounds simple when you say it fast. Up close, it is mixed with humiliation, anger, gratitude, and the work of rebuilding your own judgment in your own eyes. 3 days after the arrest, Nathan came by in the afternoon. Carol was out buying groceries, so it was just the two of us. He stood in the kitchen doorway longer than usual before sitting down. The apartment key he no longer shared with Alicia was on the table beside him. You look worn out, I said. I am. I poured coffee for us both. He wrapped his hands around the mug without drinking. They went through everything in front of me. Was that necessary? I guess so. He stared at the steam. There were folders, spare phones, draft forms, printed materials. She had versions. That's what got me. He swallowed. Versions. She knew what she was doing, I said. I know. He rubbed his forehead. I keep trying to work out what part of any of it was real. I considered the question. A person can enjoy your company and still exploit you, I said. Those things can sit in the same body. But once she began using intimacy to access your retirement savings, the honest part stopped mattering. He looked up. That sounds colder than what Mom would say. It is. Is it true? Yes. He nodded once. Then he said, I should have seen it sooner. Maybe. He gave me a tired look. That's generous. No. Accurate. Maybe you should have. But seeing it later is still infinitely better than refusing to see it at all. He sat back. I went on. Tell me the first moment you truly knew. He thought. Not at dinner, he said. Earlier, when she started talking about timing like it was a moral quality. Like careful people were weak, and only smart people moved fast. I gave a slow nod. There. Yeah. Why didn't you act then? He gave a humorless smile. Because I liked her. He liked her. He wanted the picture she offered to be real. That did not make him foolish. It made him human. Nathan looked at me and said, The embarrassing part is that I almost convinced myself your reaction at dinner was just old instinct. It was old instinct, I said. Old instinct is often earned. That pulled a real brief smile out of him. When Carol came home, she set the bags down, took one look at Nathan, and crossed the kitchen without a word. Oh, sweetheart, she said. He stood and let her hold him. Not tightly. Not theatrically, just long enough to remind him that some kinds of contact ask nothing and cost nothing. You're staying for supper, she said when she let him go. He started to protest. She cut him off with one look. That wasn't a question. He stayed. Dinner that night was simple. Soup, bread, salad. We talked about ordinary things first because ordinary things are part of recovery too. The weather, a broken gate latch, a hockey trade Nathan thought was stupid. Then, later, after Carol had gone upstairs to switch the laundry, Nathan sat with me at the table and said, If you hadn't looked at those papers that night, I think I would have talked myself into it. Probably. He nodded. Yeah. Because she never asked for everything at once, I said. She made each step look like the reasonable next one. That's exactly it. I studied him for a moment. Do you know what matters most to me in all this? That I didn't lose the money? No. He looked surprised. What matters most, I said, is that the moment your gut told you something was wrong, you did not keep yourself alone with it. You reached out. He looked down at the table. After a while he said, I'm glad I came to dinner. So am I. 2 Sundays later Nathan came again. Same house, same table, same roast chicken Carol had been making since he was small enough to swing his legs under the chair. But the air was different this time. Lighter in one sense, heavier in another. The danger was gone. The afterimage remained. Nathan arrived 10 minutes early, carrying a loaf of bread and a bottle of sparkling water as if he needed to arrive with evidence of purpose. Carol took both from him and said, Good. You remembered. I remembered one thing, he said. At your age, that counts. He smiled. At the table, none of us spoke Alicia's name at first. I was not prepared to let a fraud artist claim permanent residence in our family language. Carol said, The hydrangeas gave up after the storm. Nathan cut his chicken and said, They lasted longer than I thought they would. They always do, she replied. Then they go all at once. I glanced at her. Carol has a talent for saying things plainly that happen to apply elsewhere. Nathan noticed too. That feels aimed. It wasn't, Carol said. But if it helps, take it. He laughed under his breath. I watched him through the meal. He was quieter than usual, but not in the same way as that first dinner. Then he had seemed split between performance and alarm. Now he looked more settled. Bruised perhaps, but settled. Halfway through the meal, Carol asked him, Are you sleeping any better? A little. That means no. It means a little. She shook her head. Men, I said, your mother has never accepted approximate answers. That's one word for it, Nathan said. We ate on. An empty fourth chair stood against the wall. Kitchens hold extra chairs. Still, I was aware of it. After dinner, Nathan rose automatically and started gathering plates. Carol said, Leave them. I'm already up. Then stack them properly. Last time you nearly started a landslide. He obeyed with mock solemnity. When Carol went upstairs to call her sister, Nathan came back with 2 mugs of coffee and sat across from me. The house was quiet in that particular Sunday way, all small sounds and old familiarity. He turned the mug once in his hands and said, I keep replaying the whole thing. That's normal. I'm trying to find the moment where a smarter version of me would have stopped it earlier. I took a sip of coffee. Do you want the comforting answer or the useful one? The useful one. All right, a smarter version of you might have stopped earlier. Or he might not have. Intelligence was never the main lever. The lever was emotional timing. Nathan looked at me carefully. Meaning? Meaning she did not ask for money from a stranger. She built trust first. By the time the financial conversation began, the relationship itself had become part of the pressure. He leaned back. That makes me sound easy to manipulate. No. It makes you available to attachment. He stared into the coffee. That sounds kinder than it feels. It is not meant to be kinder. It is meant to be more accurate. He absorbed that in silence. Then he asked, what gave her away first? Really? The signal gave you away first, I said. He shook his head. You know what I mean. I did. Her language was too frictionless, I said. Strong opportunities, better access, administrative drag, intake windows, high returns presented as if they were routine. She made risk sound like intelligence and caution sound like small-mindedness. He nodded slowly. That's exactly how it felt. And you laughed half a beat late all night. That pulled a tired smile from him. I can't believe you noticed that. I notice most things when I'm worried. He held the mug between both palms. I hated using the signal. Why? Because it made me feel 12. I shook my head. No. It means when words failed, you remembered the fastest, honest route to help. He looked away toward the dark window. I did not know how to say it in front of her. I know. I think some part of me knew before I could admit it to myself. That is how people often recognize danger, I said. Not in a sentence. In a feeling they keep trying to overrule. He was quiet. Then he asked, Do you think she ever planned to stay with me? I considered the question, though not for long. No. His jaw tightened, but he nodded. Yeah. Do you want the softer version? No. Good. Because a person planning a future does not keep notes on your savings, your routines, and your pressure points. He stared at the table. That was one of the cruelest details investigators had confirmed. His habits, his decision rhythm, the things he trusted. A decent man turned into a set of tactics. After a long silence, Nathan said, Sandra mentioned some of the other victims. She did to me as well. Do they get any of it back? Some may. Some won't. The money is only part of it, though. He nodded. Yeah, the larger loss, I said, is often confidence. People stop trusting their own judgment. That damage lingers. Nathan looked at me. That part I understand now. I know you do. I had no interest in turning it into a search for blame inside the home. So I said, listen to me carefully. The worst thing you could do now would be to turn yourself into the villain of this story because she reached for your trust and found it. He looked surprised, then relieved. I went on. You are responsible for what you do next, not for the fact that someone skilled at deceit chose you. He nodded slowly. After a while he asked, would you have known what to do if this wasn't your field? I thought about that. Maybe not as fast, I said. But the field was not the first thing that mattered. The first thing that mattered was you asking for help. Carol came back downstairs carrying a pie plate. Are you two solving human nature again? She asked. Only the easy parts, I said. She snorted and set the pie on the table. Nathan looked at it and said, you made the good one. There is only one good one, Carol replied. The others exist to disappoint guests. He laughed. We moved to the living room later and watched part of an old hockey game none of us cared about. Carol fell asleep in the armchair with her feet tucked under a blanket. Nathan sat on the sofa, quiet but no longer withdrawn. Halfway through the second period, without taking his eyes off the television, he said, thank you. You do not need to thank me. I know. I turned to look at him. The important thing, I said, was not that I knew what to do. It was that you came to me before the damage was done. He nodded once. The game went on. The rain softened. Carol snored once and woke herself up. For the first time since that first dinner, the quiet in the room felt ordinary again. There are a few things I want to say clearly. As a father who nearly watched his son walk into ruin while being told it was love and opportunity, fraud works because it does not usually begin where people think it begins. It does not begin with transfer instructions. It begins with atmosphere, warmth, familiarity, exclusivity. The feeling that you have finally met someone who understands what other people have missed in you. By the time the money is mentioned, the emotional architecture is often already in place. She made speed sound intelligent. She made questions sound unsophisticated. She made trust feel like proof. A week after that second Sunday dinner, Nathan stopped by in the late afternoon to return a drill he had borrowed months earlier. Carol was out visiting her sister, and rain was ticking softly against the kitchen window. He set the drill on the counter and stood there a moment with an envelope in his hand. What's that? I asked. Retirement statement. You can open it. I know. He turned it over once, then set it down, unopened. I watched him. He said, I still tense up when anything financial comes in the mail. That will ease. You keep saying that. Because it will. He sat down, and I took the chair across from him. Tell me what is still sticking, I said. He was silent for a few seconds. Then, that I was lonely enough to make room for this. There it was, the deeper injury. I answered carefully. Wanting companionship is not misconduct, I said. Wanting to be chosen is not a defect. Predatory people rely on ordinary human desires. He rubbed both hands over his face. It still feels weak. It feels exposed, I said. That is not the same thing. He looked down at the envelope. After a moment he said, I keep thinking about the signal. So do I. It's strange that something from when I was a kid is what got me out. I shook my head. Not strange. Useful. Some of the strongest instincts we build in a family are simple ones. He thought about that. Then he said, when I did it, I wasn't even planning to. It just happened. That matters. Why? Because it means your body recognized what your pride was still trying to argue with. Do you think I would have done it, he asked, if I hadn't come to dinner that night? Transferred the money? Yes. I did not soften this answer either. Yes, I said. He closed his eyes briefly. I think you would have taken one more meeting, then accepted one more explanation, then told yourself one transfer did not mean commitment to the whole thing. That is how these traps work. They move in increments. He opened his eyes. That's hard to hear. I know. Hard truths can still be useful. He nodded. Then he said, I'm glad you didn't talk to me like I was stupid. You are not stupid. No, but I was close to doing something stupid. That is a different sentence. That earned a faint smile. A little later he asked, what was the first thing that made you think she was practiced? Not just shady, practiced. I leaned back and thought about the first moment the answer had formed. She wasn't impressed enough by me, I said. He frowned slightly. You told her I was retired OPP, I said. Maybe not all the details, but enough that a cautious operator should have slowed down. She didn't. That told me she trusted her own script more than she feared scrutiny. Nathan considered that. So not reckless. No. Rehearsed. He looked toward the rain-dark yard. I hate that there were other people before me. So do I. I hate that maybe some of them never asked anyone to look at the documents. That happens often, I said. Not because they are foolish, because shame arrives early and outside help often arrives late. He looked back at me. I almost let that happen. But you didn't. You keep coming back to that, because that was the whole difference. We sat there in the kitchen with the envelope between us. Finally, he picked it up, slid his thumb under the flap, and opened it. His eyes moved down the page. Then he let out a slow breath. It's all there. Yes, that sounds obvious. It isn't. Seeing the number stay whole matters. He folded the statement and put it back in the envelope. At the door, he paused with one hand on the frame. Dad. Yes? If something ever feels off again. I raised an eyebrow. You know where I live. He laughed softly. That's not what I meant. I know. He looked at me for another second. Then he said, I don't think I'll talk myself out of it next time. That, I said, is worth more than any return she promised. He nodded and stepped outside. After he left, I stood in the kitchen a moment longer than I needed to. Carol came home near 5 carrying a paper bag of pears and set it on the counter. How is he? She asked. Better. Actually better? Yes. She studied my face, then nodded. As we put the pears away, I thought about the families who never get that ending. The people who keep quiet 1 week too long. The widower who was too ashamed to press charges. The sons and daughters who want so badly to believe in the person across from them that they mistake discomfort for disloyalty. So let me say this plainly. If someone offers urgency, exclusivity, and poor verifiability in the same package, stop. If someone asks you to trust the relationship more than the paperwork, stop. If someone benefits from keeping your questions emotional instead of factual, step back. And if someone you love reaches for you in whatever signal they have, listen before pride gets involved. A warning does not have to sound elegant to be real. Sometimes it is a strange silence at dinner. Sometimes it is a grown son using a childhood rescue signal because his instincts recognized danger before he could form the words. That instinct did not save Nathan by itself. Instinct is only useful when acted upon. What saved him was that he honored the discomfort quickly enough to invite another set of eyes into the room. Too many people wait for certainty that feels soothing. By the time it arrives, the account is already gone, and the shame has already done half the predator's work. Nathan did something better. He trusted the wrongness just enough to ask for help. That was the whole difference. A month after the arrest, he stopped by again to return the drill charger he had forgotten the first time. We stood in the driveway under a pale wash of evening sky, talking about ordinary things. A project at work, a neighbor's new fence, the side gate latch I still had not repaired. Then, almost casually, he said, I drove past that coffee place yesterday. I looked at him, and? I thought it would hit harder. He shrugged. It didn't. What did you feel? He thought for a second. Mostly relief, he said. Relief that I'm not the man who walked in there thinking he was about to build a future with her. Good, I said. He nodded. Then, before he got into his car, he stepped close, took my hand, and squeezed it 3 times. This time I did look at him immediately. The meaning had changed. Not help me. Thank you. I closed my fingers once around his hand. He smiled, got in the car, and drove away. I stood in the driveway watching the road a moment longer than necessary, thinking about how narrow the distance had been between our ordinary life and a disaster that would have lived with him for years. We kept the ordinary life. That is not a small victory. And if there is a lesson in any of this, it is not that danger always looks dangerous. It is that trust needs boundaries. Questions are not cruelty. And the people who love you should never punish you for asking them to look closer. That night, when Carol and I turned out the kitchen light, she asked, What are you thinking about? I looked around the dark, familiar room and said, How little distance there can be between disaster and dinner. Carol slipped her hand through my arm. And? She leaned her head lightly against my shoulder. Yes, she said, but not this time. No, not this time.